Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker betting show. I'm your host, George Elek, and today I'm joined by both Oddschecker's very own tipster, Andy Holding, and sports broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward, as well as we look ahead to Saturday's racing at both the Curragh and at Newcastle, including the Irish Derby and the Northumberland Plates. But before we get into our Saturday preview, we cannot speak to the guys in the week after Royal Ascot without having a little look back and seeing what the guys made of the racing, any horses to take out of it as well. So Andy, I'll start with you. We spoke in the later previews of the week about a couple of hard luck stories. So let's keep it positive. Who are the horses that you're taking out of Royal Ascot who you think really impressed?
Well, I think the two-year-olds that ran, the figures certainly point towards Dramatised. I mean, she was a very special filly going into the race. We knew that off the figures, and the form worked out really well at Newmarket. But she did something even more extraordinary in the Queen Mary, knocking her previous time figure well out of the way to elevate herself as the fastest juvenile of the season so far, and that includes the likes of Bradsell and Little Big Bear as well, who also won quite nicely at Royal Ascot. So her reputation has been well and truly enhanced. I fancy her quite strongly to put up a big show in the Nunthorpe if she was to go down that route. I think connections have sort of muted or said that they might go and take on the older horses at York. She certainly won't be out of place. She's got that natural speed and push button acceleration which you require. And I think as she gets more racing under her belt, the better and faster she'll become. And obviously Mal Jim as well, just pay homage to his effort. Unlucky one. I think we've talked at length about him between us, and yeah, it pains me to keep watching that video back, but I'm pretty sure he would have won this St James's Palace quite comfortably with a clear run. But I think we're going to get good things out of him, and it's a mouth-watering division all of a sudden, isn't it? You've got Caribus obviously won it fortuitously, but you chuck in Malgym, and then you've got Homeless Songs and Inspiral as well. And then, perhaps clashing with the older horses, with Bayade later on in the season, perhaps. So yeah, that 3-year-old division, whether it be Colts or fillies, is looking pretty special.
Okay, really exciting. Dramatised 5-1, best price as it stands for the Nunthorpe with Skybet, William Hill, and Unibet. Should be getting absolutely loads of weight from the older horses as well, the older colts, I should say. If she does turn up at the Nunthorpe, Johnny, who caught your eye?
Yeah, she was very good. You'd wonder, will she become like an airwave, one of these kind of fillies who's just a bit of a sprinting sensation. I think she's quite strong as well, so she's probably going to get better with time, and she's so powerful in her races. It was a brilliant performance from her. I mean, the Malgym race, I watched it back a few times since, and
guys, you got to start watching it back.
Yeah, it doesn't get any prettier. It was a frustrating week for me as well. Just a couple of kind of near misses at biggish prices, but I really like Kyprios, to be honest. I just like the way he knuckled down and how strong he was at the finish. In terms of the future, unless something were to emerge in the ledger, which doesn't look obvious at the moment, I really think he can be sort of the dominant force in the staying division, because I was actually in the Oddschecker offices on Monday, and let's just say it was on the grapevine that the Frankie Gosden thing was going to be severed, as it's pretty much turned out to be the case. But in terms of Stradivarius, you'd imagine that the end is probably nigh for him in terms of horse racing as well, or certainly in terms of winning Gold Cups. And the way Kyprios, in a very messy race, I know he got a great ride from Mindmore. I love the way he finished his race, because it was a slowly run race, but he was quite he wasn't in a great position because he wasn't particularly well away himself, and just the way he knuckled down at the finish, I thought he was well on top of the line. And I think it's, in terms of the Ascot experience, I think everyone loves the Gold Cup, because you get these older horses, because their stallion prospects are sort of negligible. They stay in training, and I think that's why people love it. And interesting that Chris Cook wrote an article in the Racing Post. There were a couple of very interesting articles in the Racing Post this week. One was that the Irish Derby should move to 10 furlongs, which I think is a fascinating subject. The other one was Chris Cook saying that Ascot was better than Cheltenham this year, and I kind of wouldn't mind it to almost agree. It's controversial, but in terms of Ascot itself, the Gold Cup is probably the closest we have to Cheltenham. I think we love that race because you get these horses staying around, and I think we'll see Kyprios for a long time.
Kyprios, the one for Johnny as well. Just looking ahead to the Goodwood Cup market, which we expect will be the next time we see the likes of Kyprios, Stradivarius, Mojo Star, and possibly Trueshan in the right conditions clash again, and it's incredibly tight. Kyprios is a 3-1 favourite, but bet 365 ahead of Stradivarius at 7-2, 4-1 Trueshan, 4-1 Mojo Star, and then you've got a couple of quality horses in behind as well with Scope 7-1, Manobo 8-1, and then Eldar Eldarov in there at 12-1 as well. So a really interesting division going forward. Before we move on, Andy, just on dramatised, often these winners can rightfully take all the plaudits, but Mayland C for Michael Bell as well that finished second, just a length and a quarter behind. He probably, whilst it has it's being priced up for the Unthought, might take on a less glitzy, next assignment. How did she rank in terms of speed figures with the winners of the other two-year-old races?
Yeah, I'd say the first 4 or 5 home in the Queen Mary are certainly worth flagging up, including obviously the runner-up. Her victory first time at Nottingham was also a decent time figure, but she improved immeasurably as well. I think Maria Branwell comes out of the race with great credit, as does Miami Girl. Miami Girl went into her Marygate run with a high reputation, having won quite well at Newmarket, albeit the time figure wasn't that great. She kind of disappointed at York, but that was much more like the Miami Girl that Connections were hoping for. So basically, the first 5 home, including Love Reigns, who didn't get a great ride from her American pilot, have all got to be talked about in a very favourable light. But I think if you follow the form of the Queen Mary throughout the next month or two, I don't think you go too far wrong.
Interesting stuff, and we're going to be able to assess some of the 2-year-olds form at Ascot as well in one of the Curragh races. We're going to be previewing in just a second as well, so stay tuned for that. We're going to get into the previews now, but before we do, please do download the oddschecker app. There you can find all the best prices across bookmakers, best bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and of course Andy's tips, amongst other tipsters as well, straight to the app. We are just doing Saturday's racing, so no, obviously we're recording this on Friday morning, so no Friday racing at the Curragh or Sunday either. But this is a Saturday preview. We're going to be looking at the listed races and the and the group races as well at the Curragh. So starting now with the dash, the listed race over 6 furlongs, the first race at the Curragh on Saturday, and Power Under Me is the 9-4 favourite ahead of Pirate Jenny at 130. Hermana Estrella is 5-1. Prisoner's Dilemma 15-2. Measure of Magic 12-1. Teresa Mendoza 14, 16-1 bar those. And given we'll give the Irishman the first run at the Curragh, I think it's only fair on Irish Derby Day.
Thanks very much. This is the one race that I just didn't like at all in terms of betting.
Typical.
Lyons is kind of the two main horses in the race. Power Under Me was disappointing at the Curragh last time. In fairness to him on the balance, he's been very, very consistent. He was sent off 130. He was just disappointing. I don't know. You have to put a line through that. He'd one sort of disappointing run as a 3-year-old as well, but Ger Lyons has given him a month off. You imagine he'll bounce back. Interesting horse here, this Hermana Estrella for Tommy Stack. Very, very good first time out at Naas. And then ran essentially far too freely behind Home the Songs the last day. Obviously, very, very hot race, better race than this. So, she could bounce back, and maybe this will be more of her trip. But I have to say, I found this race even with prices in, I thought it was a no bet race.
No bet race for Johnny, Andy.
I'll stick up for Power Under Me. He was a horse that I flagged up in that 12 to follow column I did with yourself, George, a month or so ago, which that's round up 2 or 3 winners and a few disappointments. And this one was definitely in the latter category. I was bitterly disappointed with his run in the Group 2 here last time out. He was a little bit slow out the stalls, which put him on the back foot, and then he had to challenge on the wing when they came towards the standside rails. I don't think that did him too many favours, but unlike his previous efforts, he was a little bit tame in the finish. He's normally been very strong in the last furlong or so in all his races, including when he won at Cork the time before, because he got headed by Moonister and then came back again. I mean, that form of that Cork win really entitled him to win this race. It was a very strong listed race down at the Mallow track. Loads of horses have come out and run well out of it, including Moonister and Elliptic and Twilight Spinner. So it looks very, very solid form, that race. And if you are prepared to give him just one off day, 35 days ago, then he really ought to take care of this lot, because I think he's better than listed class. I think he is going to be a Group 3 stroke Group 2 horse further down the line. Colin Keane's gone with him as well over Starboard Companion Pirate Jenny, who ran really well against Geocentric, again another Ger Lyons horse the other day. Interestingly though, Power Under Me's drawn 11. I think the dynamics of this race will be mapped out where the stalls are and where they race. If they race towards the stand side, then obviously stall 11 becomes favourable. If they go down the middle, then obviously Power Under Me is out on the wing again. So because it's the first race, we haven't got this race as a sacrificial lamb to find out where we are with regards to the draw. So yeah, I'd stick with Power Under Me, and I'd have a favourable mention as well for Teresa Mendoza, who comes out of a very good race at Haydock, which is working out well. We'll get on to the winner of that race at a later date in the chip chase. That was called Sense of Duty from the William Hagger stable. But again, that has worked out well, and she finished 5th. So those would be the two I'd be looking at. But hopefully, Power Under Me, if he's drawn in the right place, should be good enough.
Power Under Me 9-4 with Paddy Power, Betfair Sportsbook, and Sporting Index. And it was Teresa Mendoza 14-1 with Paddy's Betfair Sportsbook and Sporting Index. 11 runners at the moment, so 3 places with all firms. On then to the second race we're going to be previewing, which is the third race on the card, the Celebration Stakes, another listed race over a mile this time. Wexford Native 130 favourite ahead of Radebarg at 4-1. Straight Answer 9-2, Emphatic Answer 5-1. Preterville 9-1, the Acropolis 10-1, 16-1 bar those. Johnny, you said the last was the one race you couldn't really work out, so I'm guessing you got an answer for us here.
Yeah, if everything else worked out like this, life and in this card. Jim Budger's going to be a theme of my my kind of offerings today, and I think a couple of horses of his really make the market, and one of them here is Wexford Native, who I just can't have it all. He was obviously, it's 11 days he ran a Royal Ascot, and he was far too free. He was lit up, so he had the experience going over to Ascot, very hot weather, got lit up. Now he's coming back here 11 days later, and he's essentially pricing his runs behind Buckaroo and in the Irish Guineas. I don't really like the Irish Guineas form, full stop. He could well be lit up again. It's very much a Jim Bulger thing to run horses quickly with doubts over them. Essentially, they are quite in and out, I find, at times, just because the way they're campaigned, maybe the way he trains them as well. He probably trains them quite hard. So I can't have him favourite at all, and he's making the market as it is. Albeit, I don't think he'll go off favourite. Preterville here is a far more sort of consistent horse. I imagine he'll make the running, and that leads me to Emphatic Answer, who is as solid as they come. And if you watch his race, the last day at Curragh over the course and trip behind Pearls Galore, was obviously a very good horse. He was so game. He pulled 2 lengths clear of third. Shaboom was third, was a good solid horse. And he was sort of one of the first horses who kind of came under pressure on the far side rail. Dylan Brown McMonigal rode him. He found loads for pressure. And Pearls Galore, as much as she did get on top of the line, it took her a good bit of time to really assert. And I just see this race being fairly straightforward for him in terms of the way to pan out. He'll track the pace. He's very, very strong at the end of his races. And she's very strong, rather. And I think on that form, she's going to run a very big race. And I just mad keen to take on the favourite. And I think she's bang solid in this.
Emphatic Answer, best price at the moment, 5-1. That's with William Hill and Sporting Index, the one for Johnny, taking on the favourite Wexford Native. Are you keen to get against the Johnny at the moment, Andy?
Yeah, similarly to Johnny, I think we've got a favourite worth taking on here with Wexford Native. Thought he ran well well enough in the Irish Guineas, but it wasn't a run that jumps off the page with you in terms of form or figures in particular. I don't think it was a strong renewal of that race, as Johnny's alluded to. You take the winner out of it, and many of them wouldn't have been cited in our Guineas. So yeah, I think he's a bit of a false favourite. What I'd want to take him on with is to question. The figures point to Charterhouse running a big race here. I know he's got a bit to find on the ratings as such, if you believe them, but I think ratings go out the window half the time in these kind of events.
But his form would just worry me, Andy. Like, I think he's had one winner all year. Not 2 of his horses during the week. They were both very disappointed. That would definitely be like he will come good, and just not sure it's happened yet.
Yeah, it's been 122 days precisely since he's last had a win on the flat, so that's a bit of a concern.
Wow.
But look, his form behind Cadillac was boosted nicely. I thought at Royal Ascot. I thought Cadillac came out of his race with great credit at Ascot on a track that probably still didn't play into his strengths. But that Leopardstown time figure there when he won and Charterhouse was third was good enough to see Charterhouse in the mix in a race like this, if we could trust his yard a little bit more. But yeah, I think Emphatic Answer and Shaboom are the other two. Johnny's mentioned Emphatic Answer, which is perfectly entitled to off that run, but I do think Shaboom has also got to be talked about in favourable terms as well. I think that was her first try at Mars. Sensibly, she'd been tried over 7 furlongs prior to that. And I thought she kept on quite well from the back of the field. She was drawn in stall 8 that day, and it meant that they had to take back on her early to get a positive, but it meant that she was weaving her way through horses having to come from behind, which is not ideal sometimes here when they kick off the front. And Faticanta's got a bad draw, stall 10 of 10 on Saturday, so that might be enough to perhaps for Shaboon to certainly bridge the gap and maybe turn the tables around with them, Faticanta. But I haven't got a particularly strong view in this race. Again, I'd probably just mess around with those two, Charterhouse and Shaboon at prices.
Charterhouse 40-1 with
40?
Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook. Yeah.
Really? Oh wow, that is a big price. Wow. I'd no idea. Yeah, I mean 40. Oh yeah, I've changed my mind. I mean, it's top of the figures that we've got off that Cadillac run. So straight away 40-1. Yeah, my mind's been made up. Yeah, I'll probably have a decent go at that price.
That 40-1 might not last too long. Paddy's and Betfair Sports, because I say both go 40-1. As short as 28-1 elsewhere, but 33s with Unibet and Sporting Index.
I don't know if I've been to Dingle in Kerry, but one of it's extremely well served by pubs and restaurants. The Charterhouse is an extremely nice restaurant in Kerry, so I think we'll all have to go there if this wins.
Okay. Oh, courtesy of Andy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. Shaboom, 16-1. That's probably what Andy's going to say if Charterhouse goes and wins on Saturday. 16-1 with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook as well. The two for Andy taking on those at the top end of the market. On to the Railway Stakes now, and this is the race I was talking about earlier, where we get to tuck into some Royal Ascot 2-year-old form. Blackbeard is the 15-8 favourite ahead of Crispy Cat at 9-4. I've got a feeling I know who Andy's going to be putting up here, but let's ask him. Shatash is 7-2, Age of Kings 5-1, Apache Outlaw 16-1, Borletti 80-1. Blackbeard, Crispy Cat in the match bet, Blackbeard favourite. Andy, do you agree?
Well, I think Crispy Cat was one of the unluckiest losers at Royal Ascot, wasn't it? I mean, it was coming with a same run as the eventual run of the Riddler when it got completely and utterly kiboshed. I think you guys have talked about it, particularly Johnny on the preview with Sam and Richie the other day. That definitely should have been thrown out. Yeah, it was a painful one for me. Who'd backed Crispy Cat and of course Woolbank as well. Yeah, I was hoping to get that in the stewards room, but it didn't quite work out. But yeah, Crispy Cat on the evidence today, he looks as though he's crying out for an extra furlong, doesn't he? I mean, he was a little bit outpaced, and then he was coming through very, very strongly at the point whereby his run was checked. So just on that evidence. And the overall form of the Norfolk, I think, being quite a strong race. I think it was a stronger race than the Coventry, arguably, or certainly of its equal. Certainly on the time figures, anyway, he run quicker furlong per furlong than Blackbeard did in his race. Then I'd be very much in favour of Crispy Cat. Of course, has got lots of form at the Curragh as well. He's proven at the County Kildare track. I'd certainly give a favourable mention to the bottom one, Chartash, who ran really eye-catchingly well on debut at the Curragh in a good time figure race, and then he showed good battling qualities to beat Age of Kings next time out at Naas. So he's very much going the right way, and I think he's been safe for this, where he could have easily come over to Royal Ascot. So I'd go with the form of Crispy Cat, give him a chance to have some kind of compensation and connections compensation for that unlucky run at Royal Ascot.
I mean, I guess, Andy, it's a case of it's probably in the price, isn't it? The fact that Crispy Cat, that would the price be massively different if he'd got that gap and been able to go through without the Riddlers? Would he be favourite if he'd won the race, or is it factored into the price the fact that everyone could see and everyone knows that there were clearly other circumstances that led to the placing?
Yeah, it's one of those ones. Would he come here if he'd ever won the race? I don't know.
It's true. Yeah.
I'm not even sure of that. Just the mindset of connections might have been different. Okay, we've won our big race. Let's give him a break.
Yeah.
Whether they're just rolling the dice again because out of pure frustration more than anything else. I think they were quite right to be very aggrieved about what happened or what didn't happen. More likely to Royal Ascot with the stewarding. So yeah, they're looking to sort of. It's a case of like, well, we'll show you kind of thing. So I don't think it would have affected his price whether he would have won or not, because I think everyone probably put him down as the moral winner. So
yeah,
if bookmakers are going down those same lines, and 9-4 looks about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, 9-4 Crispy Cat pretty much across the board. 7-2 Chartash. Johnny.
I think this is a fascinating race. I mean, it's anomalous, really. Aidan O'Brien used to completely farm it. He hasn't won it that much in the last 10 years, but he's obviously had he's had an unbelievable run with his 2-year-olds, really. As I mentioned on the podcast before, a lot of them are more pacily bred than he would normally have this time of year. But the anomalous nature of this race is that 3 of these horses ran at Royal Ascot, and another, Apache Outlaw, ran 15 days ago. So, like, 4 of the field ran quite recently. Now, the Crispy Cat Blackbird rematch is interesting because, as Andy says, Crispy Cat definitely looked like he wanted 6 at Royal Ascot. If you go back to their clash earlier on the season at the Curragh, which is over 5 furlongs, you wouldn't really be that confident that he'd reverse that form over 6 the way that Blackbird finished the race. And when Blackbird ran in the Coventry, he was actually quite outpaced. It looked like he was going to be well beaten, and then he ran on again. So I think they might run the race for Blackbeard in terms of making it a pace that Age of Kings will go a strong pace. But I really like Chartash here, because if you just watch that race that Andy mentioned at Naas the last day, he travelled so well. And Johnny Murta was saying afterwards, like, for an Aga Khan horse, he's very, very sharp. And as Andy said as well, he's probably been saved for this race rather than an afterthought, which I think it kind of is for the Ascot horses. And as much as it was a nose over Age of Kings, his superiority was far more. I think longer term he could be a very, very good horse. He's bred to be a 3-year-old, really. And I think just the way he travels in his races, he's 7-2, and he's like, I think the others are a little bit more exposed, really. He's had 2 runs, and if that race in Naas, which I don't have the figures, but he looked more muddling than kind of truly run. He looked like he wanted a stronger gallop, which he's certain to get here. I could actually see him going off favourite. I think he'll definitely go off shorter than 7-2. He's going to be a very smart horse, I think, and he's the value in the race for me.
Chartash 7-2, the one for Johnny. Positive mention from Andy as well, 7-2. As I say, pretty much across the board as it stands, the one to side with there in the Railway Stakes. We're going to get on now to the big race of the day, the Irish Derby, where we've got Tuesday, the Epsom Oaks winner at 11-8 is the favourite. Was initially put in about 2-1 after she was supplemented for the race. Westover 7-4, Hannibal Barca 10-1, Lionel 10-1. Pispadil 11-1, French Claim 33s, Glory Days 50-1, Boundless Ocean 66-1. 8 runners at the moment. We'd hope 8 runners were going to post, given the race. It'd be a shame for any to come out now, and that does create some each way intrigue for me. But let's look at the top end of the market at the moment. And Johnny, you had some strong views on Westover in Racing Weekly on Monday. Since then, of course, a lot has changed given Tuesday's addition to the race. How do you see the top end of the market now?
Yeah, I mean, we were speaking on our little WhatsApp group during the week about and you reacted to no Colton in the race as like the greatest tip that you could want in terms of Tuesday. I think conversely his Colts are starting very good, and that's why she's in the race in the first place. I mean, as I said, when I was talking to you, I think I was talking to you guys last week, I was like, I don't know how they could put in Aidan's horses as short as they were, because they had no chance in the Derby running, literally no chance. And as it turns out, I mean, when was the last time Aidan didn't run a colt in the Irish Derby? There's a question for you. I don't actually know the answer. I'd say it's a long time ago, but it's become a really fascinating race now, because Andy would talk about the sectionals at Epsom. Tuesday's last 3 furlongs were very, very fast, and it was her first time, obviously, stepping up from beyond the mile, and she just lasted it out. She was probably a bit lucky, but conversely, she's a lot of pace, and I don't really know how this race is going to be run in terms of pace and tactics, and I think that's what's so intriguing about it. But I still think Westover for me. Colin Keane, there's a lot of chat about Colin Keane taking the right here. It's going to be fascinating for him, because Westover is not straightforward. He's a habit of leaning left in his races. He did it markedly at Epsom. He did it the time before as well when he won his mile and 2 race. And if you lean left at the Curragh, that's going to be interesting, because horses generally tend to, go over towards the rail, the other side in a race like this. It's rare that they'd end up the near side. So how will he ride him tactically? Is he going to track Tuesday, who probably has a bit more of a turn of foot than he has? But I still think he was so unlucky in the Derby. I mean, he was drawn to, it was a complex ride in terms of how he was going to get into the race from the draw 2. I thought Rob Hornby actually gave him a very good ride, apart from the trouble and run, probably avoidable. But at the time, like, if you look at him and Desert Crown, maybe around the 2 furlong pole, he's actually travelling pretty much as well as Desert Crown. He wouldn't have beaten him. He's not as quick as him. But he ran really, really well, and he powered home. And I think at 7-4, he's very, very fair. One horse I would give a mention to as well is Boundless Ocean. I was on a panel with Kevin Manning during the week, and he said he thinks he'll outrun his odds. If you look at him relative to Hannibal Barca, when they clashed at the Curragh, Hannibal Barca is a 10-1 chance here. Boundless Ocean is 66s. I was all over him at Leopardstown the last year, but it was an absolute horror show because Colin Keane got an absolute softie up front. Boundless Ocean was too keen, total muddling race. Finished his race well, but essentially just wasn't getting to the winner, who was. It's horrible when you take on Colin Keane in a 4-runner race and he gets a soft lead, and that's what happened.
Yeah.
But this horse, I think this race should be. I'm saying, like, I'm not sure how it's going to be run, but you'd imagine it to be run at a truer pace than that. He's 66s with Hills. I definitely have a few quid on him each way to supplement the bet on Westover. But I think it's a fascinating race. Tactically, it's very, very hard to call. The Colin Keane angle to the race. Tuesday and being the filly in the race, getting the weight after her striking performance, albeit a little bit fortunate at Epsom. It's a fascinating race, but for me, 7-4 is perfectly fair about the English Raider and a saver on the Boulder horse.
Westover 7-4, 365 Sky Bet 888 and Bet Victor and Parry Match, as you say, Hills 66-1 standout best price for Boundless Ocean, the each way bet to have for Johnny. Andy, we've got one ticket there for Westover. Are you taking on Johnny 7-4 with the 11-8 Tuesday?
Yeah, I haven't had a bet in this race. I'm quite glad I haven't, because had I been tempted into Westover, which I was early on in the week, I'd now be sick that Tuesday's a runner. But it gives me a chance to look at this race with a clear picture and evaluate the odds, and and take a view from there. I do think we've probably got the right favourite on balance, because I think the Oaks race was of equal of the Derbies. Certainly, if you take away Desert Crown, you look at the rest. And I've done a little bit of work on what Tuesday did in comparison to Westover, because obviously I know they're different days, but at least we have got the same course comparisons one day to another. It comes out quite favourably in the direction of Tuesday. Obviously, everyone's made a big hullabaloo over Westover having a troubled passage, and I'd certainly take that on board, because I think he's better than what we saw the other day at Epsom. I think he would have finished a clear second had he got a clear run. So you've got to upgrade that performance, there's no doubt. But I do think a lot depends how this Irish Derbies run. If they go what I would consider just an okay gallop, and they don't go a million, I think it's quite surprising in some respects that Aidan O'Brien hasn't left a foot soldier in this race. Just one of his colts to perhaps dictate it to the.
See, he's happy if they go slow.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's what he's
angle,
hoping for, isn't he? Yeah. He's almost taking the pacemaker angle out of the equation by saying, well, there isn't a confirmed front runner in the race, because there isn't. None of the other horses in this race have made the running before. French Claim has, but does Paddy Toomey want to make the running with him? So, like I say, it's a funny one with regards to tactics, but I think Ryan Moore's going to be in the box seat here, because he's drawn one, and I think with a good jump from the inside, he's going to be second or third, right round the paintwork, on the inside, covering the speed. And if it becomes a question of a turn of foot in the latter stages, there's no doubt in my mind that Tuesday's the fastest horse in this field. She's the best horse in the field. Johnny said she was hanging on the other day, which was true in the context of Emily Upjohn. But if you look at the others, he was going further and further. She was going further and further away from Nashua, who's gone on to win a French Oaks.
Probably didn't stay in fairness.
Yeah. So I think we're dealing with a very, very good Oak. I think the front two fillies are very good in the Irish, in the English Oaks. The back end sectionals compared to the Derby as well, which you can do by sort of splitting the two screens and putting them together, again comes out favourably ahead of the Oaks. So I would favour Tuesday over Westover, unless it was a complete mother and father of a gallop, and obviously the real stamina-laden profile of Westover might come into the equation, because I think we all see him as a ledger horse, ostensibly. And I also agree with Johnny, that Boundless Ocean is no right to be 66-1. He would have definitely shaken up Hannibal Barca had he got a clear run the last time that they met. Hannibal Barca clocked a big number. The form's worked out well. Sensei, who was running on third, ran really well the other night at Nace in a similar race. The time figure was exceptionally good. So I do think Boundless Ocean is going to run a hell of a lot better than his odds suggest. And he's always looked as well, Johnny, as well, at looking at him, that he wants further than a mile and a quarter. Yeah. He's a big, strong unit, and he's always hit the line hard every time he's run over a mile and a quarter. So yeah, he's a massive,
despite having a propensity for running free as well, which suggests
he doesn't really though. It's just the last day was such a mess of a race. I it wouldn't worry me at all tomorrow.
No,
okay.
it wouldn't worry me either. It's particularly in a race like this where you'd like to think there'll be a fairly generous gallop on. So it's a fascinating tactical affair. We don't know what's going to happen. I haven't got a clue. I don't know who's going to lead, what the arrangements are. There's going to be connections there already working it out. Right, there's going to be no pace in there. We're going to lead. We don't know that, but I would say if they go just a relatively okay pace without going, breaking any world records, then I think Tuesday I'll do this lot for turn of foot. But yeah, Boundless Ocean is also definitely worth factoring into the equation at that price.
So Tuesday getting the vote for Andy ahead of Westover. So 1 apiece for the top two in the market, 11-8. Boundless Ocean though, the one for both the guys at an each way price. Hopefully we'll get all eight running. 66-1 Boundless Ocean with William Hill 50-1 market price as well. That is the Irish Derby preview. We've got a couple more races on the card. And one more race on the card to preview before we move on to looking at Newcastle. A couple of races in Newcastle. Looking at the. I didn't realise you sponsored a race at the Curragh, and you've got the ARM Holding International Stakes.
Yes.
Andy Richard Michael Holding, isn't it? That's what I.
I am Holding. Yeah, Andrew Michael Holding. Yeah. So
there we go.
Can't believe they put the R in there to spoil it.
I know.
That would be amazing.
So this is Andy's race over mile 2, and Max Sweeney is the 11-4 favourite ahead of Rumbles of Thunder at 7-2. Bear Story 6-1 alongside Duke of Cessa at 6-1. Alcal at 13-2. Vega Magnifico at 7-1. Visualization at 8-1. And Andy, I thought of all people having their own race, you would ensure that we wouldn't have a 7-runner affair.
I know.
An absolute disgrace. But given it's your race, we'll let you take the first run at it.
Yeah, really good races, intriguing. I think there's several in with a chance. Again, depends on how the race pans out. But I do like Rumbles of Thunder. I think Paddy Toomey's he's campaigning this year of his horse has been second to none. He's got a really, really good bunch of 3-4-year-olds. He's very patient. He doesn't get drawn into battles he doesn't need to get drawn into. The temptation would have been to take horses over to Royal Ascot, but he's no. But I know where I'm at. I know what my sort of skill set is. Home soil, giving them breaks between their races, and that brings me on to Rumbles of Thunder, who's been, like I say, specifically saved for this meeting ever since she won at Gowran last time out. It was a really good ride by Colin Keane. He came towards the near side rail. Yes, he got the best ground, but I think his filly was by far and away the best. And that was off the back of an eye-catching run first time out at the Cork, when that run, if you like, was all part of the, in inverted commas, process. And I think she should be absolutely cherry ripe for this. Mile and a quarter around the Curragh is going to be ideal. I've got a healthy amount of time for the top one, Bear Story. He loves the Curragh, and he's another one to come out of that race at the Curragh, that Group 1 last time out, which couldn't have worked out any better. At Royal Ascot, State of Rest and Broome, of course, 4th and 5th respectively. Both went on to take their prizes at Royal Ascot. And our Bear Story he's not a Group 1 horse, but he ran pretty well back in 6th, a respectable 6th behind 2 or 3 of the world's best horses, Alan Kerr, obviously, and we know how good State of Rest is. So back in this kind of grade, I don't think he should be underestimated. And I think Joseph has done well to avoid dipping his bread into other potential pitfalls with Vega Magnifico. He had that horse entered up twice at Royal Ascot. Again, he resisted the temptation. And the fact that he's prepared to come here and have a swing at this lot, only rated 94, having could have run at Ascot in 2 races rated 94 against horses of lesser ability, I think tells you all we need to know about how he thinks about that horse. So I think this is a really, really good race on paper. I'll go with Rumbles of Thunder because I'm a massive fan of the Paddy Toomey sort of setup. But Bear Story and Vega Magnifico as well, you can make cases out for those two.
Rumbles of Thunder 7-2, Paddy's 888, and Betfair Sportsbook, but a couple more to keep on side as well. Bear Story 6-1, Vega Magnifico is 7-1. Johnny?
Yeah, just looking at Paddy Toomey's strike rate this season, 37%.
Yep, absolutely, yeah,
absolutely insane. So I love trainers like he and Ger Lyons because they're quite selective. I think both of them probably turn down a lot of horses that they just don't think are good enough. So they have a base level that's quite high. And then when they do run them, they're basically always cherry ripe. That's not the case with Jim Bulger, obviously, who runs his horse a lot. I mean, Max Sweeney, I mean, I'm not sure which of the two Bulger horses I mentioned are worst favourites, unless the weather is going to do something that is essentially not forecast. Like, this horse has absolutely no chance on the ground because he basically wants it soft or heavy. He's run some okay race on nice ground, but it's been, I mean, there is a bit of rain forecast. It's been a warm week in Ireland. The ground's going to be interesting tomorrow because the forecast will probably have Brendan Sheridan wondering what to do in a sense, because rain has been kind of forecast, but hasn't really arrived. So I think he's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Max Sweeney's not going to get his ground 100%. So I don't know how he's favourite, 11-4. But Bulger being Bulger, he'll probably run with the Thunder's forms of Gorn, as Andy mentioned. There's so much class about it, and probably being trained for this race. And conversely, in terms of strike rate, Bear Story, Nick Halford, 3% strike rate this season. He's had a lot of place runners, but it would concern me. He also holds visualization on the Mooresbridge form, Bear Story, so that probably rules that one out. So that would concern me. I don't think Halford's horse really hit the line yet, but 72 Romans of Thunder is perfectly fair. Brilliant trainer. Will run a very big race with doubts about some of the others, I think.
This race is a classic case, George, of ratings dictating how bookmakers price them up.
Yeah,
they see Max Sweeney rated 117 and almost don't factor in whether he's in form or not, or what ground it's going to be.
Conditions. Yeah,
it's just bizarre, and I often find these listed races and pattern races in general quite good betting races because the ratings sort of go out the window. I mean, for instance, William Haggis ran Sense of Duty in a listed race of the week at Haydock, and he rated 88. I mean, it didn't make a blind bit of difference. I mean, she still was, proved that she was much the equal. Like I say, I don't think you should look at that Joseph O'Brien horse and think, oh, he's only 94. He can't beat a horse that's 180, 117. When reality is, I don't think there's a huge amount between them.
Yeah, and the markets normally, work themselves out to some extent when you get to post time, and the SPs are normally more. So the early bird catches the worm in that extent. Although it was weird, not to go back to Ascot, but I was surprised to see how strong. It's easy to say in hindsight how strong Fresh was at Ascot, when considering the ground, that the rain never came and it was still kind of rock solid at 92 at the top end of a pretty competitive handicap. But yeah, I mean, given what you guys have said, it would be a surprise to see Max Sweeney go off anywhere near the 11-4 we're seeing at the moment. So if you're going to back one of the others, Rumbles of Thunder getting a positive mention from both the guys there, 7-2 at the moment, but that could be a fair bit shorter come 4:20 tomorrow afternoon. That brings our Curragh preview to a close on
just
Saturday.
Give another couple of horses as well, just to mention, George.
Yeah,
Pierre Lepan, who ran a lovely race last time behind Celtic Crown. That form is actually getting a few kind of studies across the Curragh card. Runs in the 450. It's very interesting, this horse. I think I was talking to Connections. I think he's been sort of laid out a bit for this race. If you look, it's worth looking back on his Leopardstown run Champion Stakes Day last year when he was running off 100. He was just beating 3 lengths, staying on over 7, staying on over a mile the last day at Curragh. He's now 8 pounds lower despite being placed in that Premier handicap. I'd say he could be 16, 20 to 1. The other horse who I'm very surprised at, the horse I have a bit of a soft spot for in the Phillies handicap, is Affable, who was obviously trained in England and I think won over a mile and 2 in England. But a friend of mine actually got her for Ken Condon, and she won 3 races last year. She's been put in at 20 to 1, and she's a dream of a filly. She travels really well in her races. If there's any gallop at all, go back to her run at when she won her last race at Cork, the way she travelled in the race. Go back to her run 2 runs back at the Curragh. She's running off the same mark. 20 to 1 for me is a big price. I think she'll run a big race, maybe get 4 places as well. So there'll be 2 I'd give a mention to.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Affable 20 to 1 with Paddy's and Betfair Sportsbook, who are the only 2 firms out. So you never know. You could even get bigger when the prices, when all firms come out in the 2 o'clock, that is. And Pierre Lapin, only SP at the moment because no price is out, but keep an eye out for Pierre Lapin in the 450. How's your French, Andy? Can you translate Pierre Lapin for us?
What is that wager? That sounds impressive.
Pierre Lapin, no, absolutely no idea whatsoever.
Johnny, you know, don't you?
Lapin is it a rabbit?
Yeah. So Pierre Lapin.
There we go. Pierre
Peter
the
Rabbit.
Peter
Rabbit.
Of course. There we go.
I
like to, when I go to France, I impress the French with my French, but I only have about 10 words, but I can actually speak those 10 quite well. But then they become very unimpressed with me in general. But it's nice for a moment or two.
My French seems to get better the more The longer I spend in a bar, let's say, yeah. That seems to be. I don't know if I get more confident or if it just gets better. Something twigs in my brain, but it all comes flooding back. But luckily, I can promise you I'm sober, and I don't need any booze to know what Pierre Lapin means. Let's look at now go over to Newcastle. We're going to look at the chip chase and the plate, the Northumberland Plate as well. Sense of Duty, who Andy mentioned would be getting onto, is the 2-1 favourite. Spycatcher 9-2, Glen Shield 6-1, Edrak 7-1, Ebro River 15-2, Happy Power 11-1, 20-1 bar those. And Andy, you teed up a chat around Sense of Duty earlier, so let's come to you first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is like I say, classic Haggis really. When she won her first race at Redcar at 2-9, it just looked a sort of mandatory win and was a stepping stone to perhaps handicaps. But they went straight out of the window with William. He decided straight away, even though he got given a rating of 88 and he could have easily exploited that. One or two of the trainers would have done. They would have been going nowhere near listed races or group races thereafter. But yeah, he chucked her in the deep end in that quite good fillies race at Haydock, and she came out on top. She showed good battling qualities, got her head down and hit the line quite hard. But little did we know how well that form was going to work out. Flotus, who was second, was third in the Commonwealth Cup behind Perfect Power. Benefit, the third horse, went on to win at Salisbury next time. I think it was the Cathedral Stakes. And Gale Force Mama, who was seventh, won a very competitive York handicap off top weight the next day. So it's a sensational piece of form. And even like I say, the handicappers reacted and have rated her properly, 101. I think she's probably even still better than what he's afforded her. This is the first run on the all-weather, so we've got to bear that in mind. But I think bringing collateral form and strong collateral form into the table, I think she's definitely the right favourite off that. If you are a Newcastle all-weather form fan, then the obvious one is Edrak. His body of work here at Newcastle is second to none. He comes out extremely well on the figures that we've got at this course, and he's run up spot 2 runs ago, ties in with quite a few of these. That was that big race on Easter Friday, wasn't it? Yeah, the finals day where he beat quite a few of these, and he's got a reasonably decent draw. So I think Sense of Duty is the right favourite. But if you ask me, without her in the race, what would I do? Like without the favourite bet or an each way bet, then I'd look towards Edrak.
Just quickly, Andy, because a lot of people won't. This is obviously high quality racing on the all-weather, and we see that a fair bit now. But in terms of Newcastle itself, we see a lot of all-weather tracks having their own quirks, and especially surface driven as well. Where does Newcastle rank? Do you think Newcastle course form? There are 6 horses in this race with course and distance wins under their belt, Sense of Duty not being one of them, as you say, first run on the all-weather. How important is Newcastle form in terms of general all-weather form, or is it, in your opinion, a fair surface, effectively?
Yeah, I think the surface is fair, but I do think it changes from meeting to meeting where you need to be on the track. I think there's a lot of atmospherical issues that change the dynamics, i.e. the strength of the wind. I've never been to the track, but apparently the wind direction makes a huge amount of difference to where you need to be on the track. Sometimes if it's blowing across the track, those that are drawn towards the inner they're running into the teeth of the gale, and the ones with a bit of cover towards the near side have got a bit of an advantage. And then when it's obviously a dry day or there's no wind, it shifts around. Jockeys seem to jump on certain parts of the track at certain meetings and exploit it more than others. So it's a difficult one as a punter tipping at it without knowing the evidence of how the track's going to ride. Very, very difficult. Hence the fact that I tend to back out of putting tips up at Newcastle. I think I might have a crack at the Pitman's Derby, the Northumberland Plate, because it's a 2-mile race and there's probably not that much of a bias either way there. But on a straight track race like this, very, very difficult to know without all the facts.
Interesting stuff. Johnny, what do you make of the chip chase?
Yeah, that's interesting what Andy says about Newcastle. I do find it hard. Like at the start of Newcastle, I was like, you want to be on a hold-up horse, and To my cost, I've actually often backed hold of horses that don't get into races, and
Mm.
maybe as well in hot weather. Certainly at Dundalk when it's hot, the ground starts to ride actually slower because the surface kind of compresses a bit. So I don't know if that's the case in Newcastle as well. But he didn't mention Spycatcher. If you watch that race where he was behind Edrak in mid-April, he missed the break. It wasn't particularly strongly run, but he's a hold-up horse and came the far side of the track, flashed home, was basically beating two short heads. And on that form, he's a massive chance here. He was disappointing on turf the last year over 7, and so they put cheap pieces on him. But I think back in Newcastle, I definitely like horses who've run well here before. And as Andy said, a lot of them are closely matching that form. But for me, presuming this will be run at a stronger pace, which I think it will than that day, he can only be thereabouts. He flashed home. This will be run better to suit, I think. And as long as he doesn't completely blow the start, it should be thereabouts.
Who is that one, Johnny? Sorry, I missed it.
That's Spycatcher, the Kevin Ryan horse.
Spycatcher, yeah, 9-2 best price with Hills as it stands at the moment. So a couple there, Edrak for Andy, Spycatcher for Johnny, but Sense of Duty, the one for Andy at the top of the market. So I don't think there is is there a without market now? Yeah, there is. So I can give you, if you did want to take out the favourite, you can back Spycatcher at 3-1. And Edrak at 9-2. They're both win only, and they are with Sky Bet as well. The final race of this preview is the Northumberland Plate. We've got Rajinsky at 5-1. A couple of firms going 7 places, Hills and Sky Bet. But Rajinsky's 5-1. Valley Forge 13-2. Trueshan 7-1. One Smooth Operator 7-1. Spirit Mixer 10-1. Rainbow Dancer 12s. Bandinelli 14. Summer's Night 16s. All Right Sunshine 18-1, 20-1 bar those, including Tribal Act and Uber Cool, who are both a Sea of Blue and Oddschecker, both 20-1 best price, but as short as 12-1 Uber Cool and 14-1 Tribal Art. Johnny?
Like it is amazing this bookmaking game at the moment. As much as we give out about struggling to get on and so on and so forth, like William Hill and Sky Bet are paying 7 places on this race. It's like 7 places. I mean, that is absolutely mad. So if you want to back Smooth Operator, one Smooth Operator rather, and Andy will definitely have a better idea of the form of these horses than me, with William Hill, you're getting a top price 7s or Sky Bet, top price 7s and 7 places. Now
15-2 Hills.
Yeah,
7 places.
15.
Perfect.
15 to perfect. So that's even up Jason's side. So this horse, like presuming he doesn't have mad trouble in running, he will be in the first 7. And they started him off over, I think, 1.2 miles here. He was well fancy, he won well, but he does stay. And if you look at the race behind Nate the Great in March, completely missed the break, probably took it up too soon, was headed in the post, ran another blinder here subsequently, and then at York wasn't a bad run all last time. He's going to cruise through the race. And if they do, again, as Andy says, hard to know with the track. If it is suiting hold up horses, he'll definitely shorten in price because he's a total hold up ride. Canters through his races. Ben Robinson will be holding on to him as late as possible. 7 places though, you absolutely cannot not back this horse each way, and really a few others as well.
Yeah, 15-2 best price and top place terms. One Smooth Operator with William Hill. Andy?
Yeah, he's definitely a factor. One Smooth Operator. He's just got to nudge up his numbers up to now. He hasn't quite run a time where you think, oh yeah, he's almost certain to run his race because of a back catalogue of figures. Whereas we've got 2 or 3 that just constantly run well in these kind of events, and therefore their reliability factor is a good deal greater. Rajinsky's one of them. He was 3rd in this race last year. He was drawn wide last year. He's subsequently been drawn wide again. So that's not too much of an issue. But he ran a real good race, didn't he, at Chester? I mean, that Chester Cup form, I mean, again, he probably didn't look the strongest of Chester Cups on paper, but he couldn't have worked out any better. I mean, Cleveland was, honourable 2nd behind Get Shirty. Arcadian Sunrise, the ill-fated Arcadian Sunrise, sadly, ran really well in the Ascot Stakes. Falcon 8 was 4th in the Queen Alexandra behind Stratum. Reshun, who was 10th, ran well. Did he run twice at Royal Ascot? I think he might have done. He certainly ran well in the final race behind Stratum. So from top, then of course Coltrane as well. I forgot him. He was 2nd, wasn't he? And of course he went on to win. So the form of that Chester Cup is exceptionally good. They've obviously had this race in mind connection since that day when he was 3rd here last year. He looks to have had a decent preparation as far as I could see, running in the Chester Cup. It's hard to see him not running well, Rajinsky, because he comes out really well on the sort of numbers that we've got. And the other one as well is All Right Sunshine. Again, another horse who absolutely thrives on a well-run environment. Now, whether he's a genuine 2-miler remains to be seen. He's run well over 2 miles before. He ran well on the turf at Haydock behind Valley Forge, of course, who reopposes. But I think he's probably better in a mile 6, as he proved at Royal Ascot when he was 4th behind Get Shirty. But he came from a mile behind that day, and his back-end sectionals were the fastest in the field that day. But he's got loads and loads of top quality form here at Newcastle. He ran well from a poor position here last year, but I think he was 10th of 20, but he only got beat 4 lengths. So he's had a bit of a taster to what this race involves, and he's 20-1. So I've already backed Rajinsky midweek, so he's already in my book. But I'm definitely going to be backing All Right Sunshine if I can get sort of, as what Johnny said, between 16 and 20,
Well,
7 places.
The good news is that you picked 2 horses there who are also best price with William Hill, who are also 7 places. So you've got Rajinsky 5-1, 5-1 with a few firms, but others not paying as many places. And then All Right Sunshine 18-1 best price. That is with Coral, who are 4 places, or William Hill, who are 7 places. So get yourself down
18,
to
7 places. Yeah. That's a decent bit of business. That.
There you go. A decent business for Andy to finish off this Saturday preview. Thank you very much to both Andy and to Johnny for sharing their thoughts at both the Curragh and at Newcastle. Some pretty strong fancies there, and hopefully some value too ahead of tomorrow's racing. So do download the oddschecker app now, where you can place your bets as well as finding the best prices. Bookie offers free bets. There's all important place terms as well, and you can read Andy's column every morning of racing as well. So do check that out. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this. Do subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel, where you can find all of our preview content, as well as racing weekly on Mondays with Rishi Prasad, Sam Turner, and a very special guest this week in Johnny Ward himself. Can't get away from him at oddschecker at the moment. And do find the podcasts on any podcast provider as well. Always, it's always the case. Please do enjoy the racing. Hopefully we've put a couple of winners up in here as well. But please do ensure that you are at all times gambling responsibly.